What is going on, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Season 2, Episode 3 of The Ronan Bell Show. With me today, I brought in my cousin, actually, Alan Levin. He's a really great guy. He's got a lot of interesting information. Was actually a former CEO of Northeast Products Corporation. Brought that business to what it is today, grew it significantly, and really tune in to what he's saying. He's a great guy. He's a great entrepreneur, and really see how he grew that business to what it is today and what it really took and how you become a successful business owner. So guys, make sure you hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button if you aren't already so you get notified whenever a new podcast comes out. Other than that, guys, let's cue that intro. Alan, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, Ron. How you been, buddy?
I mean, nothing's new with the whole 2020 coronavirus pandemic. Let me tell you, it's been a little bit of a wild ride these past couple months, especially being a college kid.
It's a little bit crazy. It really is. I don't know how I would fare in college during COVID. You know, studying at home, that'd be really tough for me.
Or just not studying at all.
Well, of course, I would sleep till noon. I mean, it would be like typical college.
Yeah, and it would all work out in the end, right?
Of course, why not?
But so Alan, before we get into like any bigger topic, could you just like tell the people like who you are, pretty much?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Alan Levin, beside your cousin. I am the former owner of Northeast Building Products Corporation. We are a window and door manufacturer with over 900 employees, started by my parents in 1975, taken over by my wife and I. We bought them out in 2000, and we sold it in 2018 to Dunes Point Capital out of New York.
So now not having like anything to do, are you really doing nothing?
No. So my contract was supposed to end last March, and they asked me to stay till September. Then they asked me to stay now till this June. And the other day they asked me to stay longer. So right now I am technically a consultant for the company. Mm-hmm. I am working full time, but I go in the office 4 days a week. So Friday is my day. I work from at home. And I get to do great things when I'm not actually on Teams or Zoom meetings. I get to hang with you and do great things like your podcast.
You actually get to like relax for once. Isn't that cool?
I wouldn't say relax. I'm still getting up early, and I had, like I said, an early Zoom meeting, and then I went into a Teams meeting. So I don't think you really know how to relax, as you get older.
Going 1,000 miles an hour so long, you think that it catches up with you, but nah, it never catches up.
It doesn't. I mean, it kind of fuels you. When I take time off, so we actually just went to Aruba for 2 weeks on vacation. Mm-hmm. By the end of the 2 weeks, I'm going crazy. I'm like ready to get back to the office. I have things to do. And even though I'm working the entire time, which is what's great about technology, I'm out of the office physically, but, not, it doesn't mean I'm not working. But I need somewhere to go and hang a hat and physically, interact with, other adults. And that's why I say with college, it must be hard to actually be at home working all the time, because I wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, the thing that's interesting is that you just said about that was that there is really no downtime. Like, obviously, you can't go out with your friends. You can't go out to dinner. You can't do you can't go to these big parties that, I mean, as a freshman last year, kind of get used to that lifestyle. Saturday's game day at State College. Like, we're gonna go to the football game later. It's gonna be a huge party. It's gonna be so much fun. And now it's like Saturday, you watch it on TV, and it's just not the same atmosphere.
It's what a Netflix release this week.
Yeah. And you're sitting there like, oh man, I wonder what's gonna come out next.
Right, I know. Waiting for the next season of Peaky Blinders or Stranger Things or one of the great shows.
Oh, exactly. So like backtracking in like high school, what did you think that you wanted to do when you were working there, or just being a student?
Yeah, so when I think back to high school, I never had any intentions of going to college. My father was, a high school dropout. My mother graduated high school. But they were workers. They were 6 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day. There was 1 week vacation a year, which was usually around the holidays. And, when I was 7 years old, I was running punch presses and cutting glass. I mean, I can't even imagine a 7-year-old today doing that.
Now, child labor laws.
Right, yeah. Well, we skirted them. I think they were there then, but we still skirted them.
Off the record, no one knows about it.
Right. I still have all my fingers. That's my father used to say, like, Yeah, you like your fingers? I would say, yeah. He said, keep them out of my blanking machines then. And I was 7, 8 years old. I would keep them out of the machines. So, we were a small little factory. So I grew up, and that was my passion. I grew up manufacturing things. I was a handy kid. So when I was in high school, I went and got a work roster, and I used to leave about noontime, and I would go spend about 5 hours at the factory after work every day. And we were making then, some storm windows and storm doors, those old aluminum products, which were pretty relatively easy to make. So when I was in high school, my whole goal was just to go into business.
And like going back, like seeing all your friends from high school go to college and everything, that ever like discourage you, or just you're like, this is what I want to do, like I want to like go against the curve?
I hung out with the stupid kids that weren't going to college. All those kids that were going to college were the smart ones. But most of my friends were more like me, that were more hands-on, hardworking. A friend of mine, his family owns Chicky and Pete's. Him and his brother, and he was the same way. Right into the business. It was a small corner bar at the time, and he went in the kitchen, started cooking, and everyone knows how big Chicky and Pete's is now. I was the same way. When I went into the business, we had 10, 12 employees, and it wasn't obviously a big business. It was one location. We were manufacturing, but my father built relationships with all his customers, and there used to be 30 window and door companies in Philadelphia, and we were the last ones. We bought some of them out, and we put the rest out of business.
It's crazy to think that like it just all started from that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're talking about just Chicky and Pete's, and like a lot of these big companies, they all start somewhere. Like Amazon, for an example, like Jeff Bezos, Apple with Steve Jobs in a garage. It's just crazy to think about how big these things are now. It's really hard to fathom, looking back so long ago, about like wow, what did they actually do to start?
Right. And I think one of the things with the younger generation, and for all the younger listeners, I have a 24 and 26-year-old who I make work 60 hours a week at the factory still, because I'm trying to build a work ethic. I think it's hard for your generation to see how much true hard work, and really how you have to start at the bottom. When I graduated, I was in the factory running saws and cutting glass by hand. And when I was maybe 2-3 months in, I went in and said to my mother, because that's who I would cry to when my father wouldn't listen, how do I, do more? I want to go in the office. And my mom said, well, I don't think there's anything for you to do. I was like, well, what about this purchasing? We're buying metal, we're buying glass. Again, we were a small little business. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, Dennis does that on the side. I said, well, I'll do it on the side while I'm working in the factory. So, of course, my father gave me the good old pep talk that we used to get back in the 80s, which was, you're an idiot, you'll screw it up and put us out of business. So, I fought harder, and, my father ended up giving me an opportunity. And that's kind of how I pulled myself out of the factory and learned more about the, procurement end of the business, which is really where we made most of our money. We always made more money on the procurement side because, our selling prices were dictated a lot by our competitors. The procurement side, we can negotiate and find the best deals possible.
And starting in such a small place, where were you building like most of these? You said it's a windows and siding company, correct? So like where, obviously you were in Philadelphia. Was it mostly just Philadelphia to start?
Yeah, it was in Philadelphia off of Aramingo Avenue, which is like the Bridesburg, Frankfurt section. It was all local contractors. Mm-hmm. Back then it was, pickup trucks, guys with, hook and ladders. Everyone did side work. Every painting contractor installed windows and doors. Every carpenter did windows and doors. It was very easy. You didn't really have to be licensed. There wasn't a lot of regulation, so a lot of cops and firemen did it on the side. So, where my father was really strong was building relationships with people. He was very likable, so people would come in to deal with him. Even though we weren't the cheapest, we always gave the best service and the best quality. So, that's really what helped build the business.
And the thing about like being the best quality over quantity, I feel like that's really missed nowadays because people are just throwing more and more things out there. Like on, I scroll through TikTok, I'm seeing drop shipping, like, oh, get rich quick. Like it's really not like that because you know why? You're moving some product from China that's supposedly gonna like solve world hunger or something.
Yeah.
But it's just it's more cheap crap that someone just willing to click and this is going to come in 3 weeks.
Yeah, back then really people, when they bought stuff, they wanted it to last. No one had it wasn't a disposable society. People didn't buy stuff to throw away in 6 months when they were bored of it.
That's actually a really good take. I like that we kind of think of everything now as just, I'll use it for a couple years and then it's done with. Especially with like big purchases like cars. That's a huge thing. That some of these cars like break down every once in a while, like every year or two, and then you don't know what to do.
I'll tell you, it's one of my favorite stories, just about the mentality and how your generation sees things different. You guys always want it faster, smaller and cheaper. And
yeah, right.
But you're used to that. That your generation, that's the way everything has always been. With us, this is probably 1988. I'm 20 years old. We had a general manager who built his own computer from Radio Shack. Its own computers were just starting to come out, and Apple came out with the Apple IIgs. There was something that back then it was all floppy drives. And
like
we had a program,
like the
discs. Yeah, well, they were the 3.5 inch, not the 5 1/4. So you had to flip them, and they were only, I think, 1.2 megabyte. So
not even a gig.
Not even a gig. Gig wasn't even. You couldn't even comprehend a gig. That wasn't even a word. A gig was something a band played. It was not even. You couldn't even comprehend what a gigabyte was. So So we went over, and he went to my father and said to my father, "Look, we have this program that we keep switching these discs every time we have a different size window we're making. They sell this thing called the Apple Cider, SIDER, like apple cider, but it was a little play on it, and it was $2,000. Back then, that's probably $10,000 in today's dollars.
Oh my God.
And my father said, well, do we need? He said, Irv, I think it'll be the most amazing thing. So it was 10 megabyte. Think about that, 10 megabyte.
Everyone's going nuts about it.
Yeah, and the thing was maybe like 18 inches long, 8 inches high. So, just give you some comparison size-wise. It comes in, it works phenomenal. Like, it's great, when people aren't switching, discs all the time. So Charlie goes to my father and says, my father, Irv, we need another one for the other side of the computer, other side of the counter, so we could have multiple customers waiting on. Can we get another one? He says, absolutely. Comes back, he said, they don't make that one anymore, Apple. They now have one that's 20 megabyte. My father says, I can only imagine what that costs. He said, it's only $1,500. My father says, how could something, be less? He goes, Irv, they're running a special. It wasn't, you couldn't comprehend it because nothing ever got cheaper. Cars got more expensive, houses got more expensive, everything got more expensive. It comes in a couple weeks later. The thing now is only maybe about 10 inches by about 4 inches. My father says, see, Charlie, you got ripped off. It was only half the size. So you're getting half the amount of memory, and that's why it was cheaper. Charlie plugs in and says, no, it's 20 megabyte. We could not comprehend how something could be twice the amount of storage space, 30% less in price, and half the size.
That's insane.
Right.
But because that's the first time.
First time ever in history. How could that happen? It makes no sense. So that's the mentality back in 1988, what was going on.
Another thing I think that like my generation's really into is like finding the best deal possible. Like the thing, if it doesn't have free shipping, why buy it?
Right.
Like everything's over quantity. Like you were saying, everything's like, if it gets here in 2 days, it must be great. Like this company's really doing it right. But that's not what it is. People, if you want to get a good product, you're going to have to spend the money for it.
Right.
That's what it is. It's how it should be. It's how how it's always been. I mean, if you buy a cheap T-shirt, you bought a cheap T-shirt. Shouldn't be anything more than that, really.
Yeah, and taking it back to our business, my mother always pressed my father about not lowering your prices, just make the best product, have the best service. So I grew up in that environment, not cutting corners. So, what happened was in 1987, this was a year after I started full-time, I went to a trade show and I met someone that was just selling vinyl for making vinyl windows. And I went to my father and said, look, I think we should make vinyl windows. And he said, vinyl's cheap, it's crap, it's not going to hold up. But, at the time, energy efficiency was just starting to become a thing, coming off of, like the late 70s, high oil prices. People were trying to save energy. And that was kind of my claim to fame. He said, go ahead, you can give you one little corner of the shop, do what you want. And within 3 years, it was 95% of our business.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think about how it like started, because I think that what my generation accepts really well is the new and the greater good, like the new and the best. Like something else comes out, like, oh, I'm gonna buy that right away, no question about it, not a second inclination in the mind, just let's do it. And that's where, like, I think all these companies like Apple and Windows are coming out with product after product, and it's like getting slowly better and better and better, and everyone's just dropping the money on it right away.
Well, your generation, again, it's very important. I have certain people that need the new Apple iPhone. They don't even know what it does. It doesn't come with an instruction book. There's no sneak peeks of what the new functions are, but they need the new phone because it's a new one.
Yeah.
And they walk around in the shop, and I have guys making $15 an hour that literally were homeless a month before, and they get the new iPhone because that's more important to them.
Yeah, and that's like what sucks is you don't appreciate like just having something. It just goes out like you just want the new one, and then someone else is sitting there like they probably don't even have a phone.
Right.
And looking at like that end of business, I mean, you really got to experience the top of the top and the lowest of the low. When you're going from you start at the bottom of the company. You said you started actually working out. So how was that? Just any special privilege?
No. Listen, if anything, I'll tell you. In 1978, I'm 10 years old. I'm riding a skateboard in a factory to go get coil stock from the back of the shop. And guys that worked the line, again, there was probably 6 or 7 of them used to throw screws at my skateboard. So I would hit one and go flying off my skateboard. And my father would say, you're an idiot for driving a skateboard around glass. It was, so there was no special privileges then.
But did you think that, like, looking back on it, you appreciate that more?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I look back and I always say I lived a charmed life. My father, some people... say, oh, well, did your father ever take you to a baseball game? Did you ever play organized sports? Did you go on a lot of vacations? And I would say, well, no. Like looking back, my father, if I spent quality time with him, it was at work. And, I cherish that. Like he would take me to the factory. I would learn how to manufacture, which had helped shape who I am. The only organized sports I ever played were in school. We'd never had, outside sports.
And it's crazy to think that like that's a huge gap nowadays. Most people go right from high school, they go to college, and they get this lifestyle that nothing really matters. Like I'm in college, I can do what I want. I can worry about that 4 years later. Where when you go straight into it, and now you're like, oh, like how can I make money now? How can I better myself right now? Because there's no education. I'm learning what I'm supposed to do for the next 30, 40 years to be more successful.
Right.
And the point that I like that my AP government teacher, Mr. Seltzer, made was that, everyone really fluctuates. Not everyone really learns the some way, coming from a teacher's perspective. In that kind of business, does everyone kind of, learn the same way of how to make the craft? Like everyone starts at the bottom and works their way up, or just kind of?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our top management, other than certain fields like accounting or HR, where they really, need to have some type of education, as we grew. But if you look at the best manufacturing talent we have, it all started on the plant floor, and then they would take, like specific Six Sigma, lean courses, things that would, benefit, and you will learn from other people how to do a Kaizen event, like manufacturing events on the floor to better the plant floor. So, most, I would say probably 90% of our, management on manufacturing, they have just high school degrees, if that.
And would you, like, when you're at the top, we'll get into like the bottom a little bit later, but when you were at the top, like when these people were applying, did you really care about if they went to college, obviously, for certain things?
No, I mean, for accounting, absolutely. I need to know where, if they worked in public accounting, what their background is, were they ever a CFO, a controller, what their career path was. Because obviously you can't teach somebody.
You need to know the numbers.
Yeah, you got to know the numbers. HR is the same way. So, funny thing is my son, he's a business major, graduated magna cum laude from University of Tulane, Tulane University. And he got dumped into an HR role because we needed him there. Our HR director left, and I said, hey, I need to put you in there. He, in the past year, has become the best HR director we've ever had, ever, and can manage 900 people and a team of 8 like nothing. Like no one else ever has. My daughter, she's the same way. She went to Syracuse. She went to the business school up there. She ended up coming in, worked in purchasing, did a great job, went over to operations, and then we had an opening when COVID hit in the employee health and safety because it was so important now trying to get people back. She knows nothing about it. I threw her in there. She picked it up. It's all hands-on training. No matter how much formal education, until you're physically there doing it and, being required to do certain reporting and, deal with government agencies like the EEOC, or, Labor Relations Board, or OSHA, that's, you could teach them all you want in school, but until you literally have to sit there and go through audits, it's invaluable.
It's like you throw a kid in the fire, what are they going to try and do? Get out.
Right.
Or try and put it out. I feel like when you're thrown into something more, you have a better chance of figuring out how to overcome that or how to figure out how to do it. And nowadays, like if you see something on the ground, like a piece of furniture, like IKEA furniture, you can figure out how to put it together, but you actually got to figure it out. Obviously, your kids had to figure out how to, run this certain thing. You're doing a whole different thing. School helped you learn about how to do your chores, not how to do that.
And it's also a maturing time.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for, those 4 years for, kids to mature. You become more of an adult. And until, again, it's trial by fire. And, I was taught that way. I was thrown into it. I always said my, mother and father never held me by the hand and told me, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you to do it. It was more like, get out there and figure it out. My kids both are at that point where they have to figure it out.
And and when you step away and tell them to go figure it out, it's up to them at that point. And that's
Absolutely.
That's what shows like who someone really is. Are you going to actually figure it out, or are you just going to sit there and, mope around and not do anything about it? Because nowadays that's like a thing that actually happens, that they'll sit there and they'll look at the piece of furniture from IKEA and they'll be like, well, it's not built yet? Wow, like, I wonder why.
It shows someone's character when no one's watching what they do.
Yeah, my buddy Justin Jaworski, who plays basketball at Lafayette, I just interviewed him, and he was saying that big thing about social media nowadays, and this is just from an athlete's perspective, they show all how hard they really work. But you know what? No one cares.
Right.
No one really cares about how hard they work until when you're out in the court or out on the field and show everyone how good you are and score points or do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I don't care how much LeBron James practices. Just get on the court and play hard. That's what I want to see.
Exactly.
I want to see the end result. I don't want to see you practicing.
Yeah, and everyone always wants to see the end result. No one cares about how much hard work you put in, because that's not what it's about. It's about the end product, right? Like, you're making a window. No one cares how it's made.
Sure.
Let's see how it holds up.
Hey, look, just setting up this podcast, how long did it take you? And the issues with the microphone and, getting everything set up. I mean, no one cares.
Yeah, guys, this is actually take 2. If you guys care, you probably don't. But, I mean, hey, you move on. You keep on keeping on. Merch available at theronanbellshow.com if you want some. But besides the point, Alan, what about we're going into, now that you're like, you work your way up through the company, now you're El Jefe. Like, how does that really feel at the end of the day to be your own boss?
You know what? So I always, it's kind of like a security blanket when I had my father and mother there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, more my father. My mother, by the time I was growing in, she was doing a lot more charitable, philanthropic things. But I always knew at the end of the day, I could always kick it back and say, yeah, go see Irv. Like there was always that go see him. It's not my problem. When my wife and I, Fran, we've been together since we were 15. She came into the business after she graduated University of Delaware with your mom. Just by coincidence.
That's crazy.
We got married. Fran came into the business. She started when she was 19 working with us. My wife and I bought my parents out back in 2000, so 20 years ago. And even though my parents gave us half the business when I was 24, they wanted us to buy the other half because they felt that they earned it and they wanted to retire to Florida. And my answer was, why do I need to buy it? I'm going to inherit it anyway. There's no one else to inherit it. It's me. And my father said, no one will ever give you the respect as the boss if they know they could always come to me. And it was really great advice looking back. So we bought them out, and it was an overwhelming weight on my shoulders. Like having that much, first of all, debt, which I never had debt in my life. I was 32 years old and just, two little kids and thinking, oh my God, now it's all on me. And it was a sink or swim. To give you an idea, we were a $10 million a year business then.
Like, that number in my head is insane.
Yeah. To give you an idea, when we sold the business, we were a $120 million a year business.
That number seems even crazier in my head.
Yeah, even in my head. So, when I went in, we were probably doing $1 million of sales back in '86. So, it was definitely a big weight, but it was one of those, some people have they succeed because they love the feeling of winning. I succeeded because I have a huge fear of failure. It's overwhelming for me to think that I'm not going to succeed in something. And I can honestly say, I don't think I've ever failed in my life in anything.
What do you classify as failure? Because I think failing sometimes shows you more about your character than what you think. You're talking about just like ending
complete failure. I mean, like the business going out of business, my marriage falling apart, I mean, of course, look, we make mistakes. There's a difference with mistakes along the way and road, speed bumps. But, I'm talking about having this business that my parents created fail because I couldn't keep it going and I made bad decisions. That was to me, and that fear was just, it drove me. I didn't care what I had to do. I just kept working. And, the difference between my father and my management style, which was really a lot of my success, my father liked yes men. He liked people that did everything he said. Go run into that wall. Guy would run into a wall.
Let's do it.
Go run into the wall again. Guy would do it again. Go run into a third time. Guy would do it again. And I would say, why are you running to the wall? Well, your dad told me to. Not a good reason. Me, I would be like, hey, let's go figure a way out together. How would you get around that wall? My father liked people who just would do what he would say without question.
Cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Kind of lifestyle. Like, do this. Don't really think outside the box.
Correct.
Do what you...
Just trust me. I will tell you what to do and just follow me blindly. And I was the other way. I like to be challenged. Mm-hmm. And, one of my mottos is steel sharpens steel. And I love that. I actually have a big laser cut piece of steel that is laser cut out that says steel sharpens steel.
Yeah, good thing you have a siding company.
Right. Not siding, windows and doors.
Windows and doors.
But it's, that means basically that, if I have people that aren't going to make me sharper, then I don't need them around. There's an old saying that says that A players hire other A players. B players hire C players because they're threatened. And, I always consider myself an A player, and I want other A players, people that can bring more to the game. So I always surround myself with very talented people that could teach me something.
That's the thing that a lot of the entrepreneurs that I follow on Instagram and everything, they'll say, I'll tell you how successful it would be. Let me look at your friends. If your friends are bums, you're going to be a bum. It's just how it is. The more like-minded people you have around you, the higher chance that you have of, on your worst days, that someone's going to be able to pick you back up when, you're having a bad day, or vice versa. He's having a bad day. Here, let's get through this together. It's probably not that hard. Let's figure out how to do it instead of dropping everything and quitting.
Absolutely.
There's a big difference in that.
My COO, who's one of my best friends, I always said, and he told my kids this when they both started, do you want to be an eagle or a turkey? Because eagles soar, turkeys can't fly, those hang on the ground. So if you want to be turkeys, just hang around with other turkeys. If you want to be an eagle, go soar with the eagles.
That's a great way of putting it, because nowadays that everyone's just inclined to kind of go with the flow, more or less. This is the path that has been made out for me or whatever. But you really have it in your own hands. You can pick who you want to hang out with. You don't have to hang out with everyone that all your other friends are hanging out. I mean, you can kind of do your own thing nowadays, especially with the power of the internet. It's amazing. You can learn whatever you want through YouTube.
Absolutely.
And the crazy thing about that is what you were saying, how you said I went from high school and I went straight to working. Imagine if you could in high school learn some of the things that you learned in your first couple of years in 20 minutes on a video.
Yeah, but I would have missed all of the experience that went with learning it. Learning it in a video, you're not really doing anything other than watching. A lot of my mistakes, it's like scars. Scars toughen up your skin. Mm-hmm. These are scars. Everything I've done has shaped me, good or bad, for who I am.
And going back to having the weight on your shoulders, going through all of these things, having that weight after going through the ranks, do you think it was a little bit easier, or just kind of it all kind of hit you at once, or?
I think it was hard. When my parents were retiring, everyone always looks and they think nepotism, mm-hmm. and the boss's son got it easy. But over the years you gain respect. And when people see that you do things differently, I used to hear, oh, well, you're not your father. And I would say, well, I'm not my father. Yeah, well, he wouldn't do that. I go, if I was my father or trying to be my father, I'd be a cheap imitation. I'm myself. And I'm not going to do things exactly like him, because I don't agree with everything he did. That was his way, not my way. So, you got to kind of blaze your own path and not try to emulate someone exactly. Yeah,
you can't copy exactly what someone does. You gotta do it by yourself, because that's and if you're wrong, you're wrong.
Right.
You gotta realize that obviously, I'm sure that everything you did didn't go 100%
no, absolutely.
Right. It never does. Not everything's 100%.
But you have to be able to pivot. One thing that people make mistakes in business, they fall in love with their ideas. I work with someone who's that way, who cannot pivot. And he just gets stuck in his idea, and it's detrimental, and it becomes a big issue. One thing I've always been able to do is, whether it's people, if I have a hiring that's not good, I will identify it and terminate immediately. I'm not going to waste time. Some people try to force it. Same thing with products. If we have a product that's not working, get rid of it, cut it. Stop trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I feel like that a lot of people, when something hits and doesn't go right, they just try and keep doing the same method. And that's the definition of insanity. Exactly. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, nothing's going to change, even though that you really want it to. It's just not going to happen, because it's how it
people
is.
Fall in love with their ideas, and they just want them to work so bad, they just only want to cut it loose.
And the thing about running a big business is, it's not it's only you running. You have other people that can give you advice, because maybe they'll say oh, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this store or make this window, we should go this way. And you're oh, well, maybe that makes a little bit more sense.
Right.
You're right. And that's a good thing about a business. It's I mean, it's easy to relate to me because like I play on a sports team and things like that. So what business is? It's like you're,
Yep.
and especially in your position, you're like coaching a sports team.
You're really more like the captain of the team.
Yeah.
You know, you can look at it one way. You know, yeah, I want everyone's ideas as long as you listen to mine last. You know, and mine's the most important one. It's not. You know, I used to be a little more that way. I used to try to force more of my ideas when we were growing the business. And every once in a while, you know, I would have to, you know, pull executive decision making and say, I appreciate everyone's input, but no, we're doing it. And thank God every one of those things we look back have been our biggest successes, because sometimes I feel like I know. But when it comes to, you know, other decisions, you know, I'll listen to everyone, and then I will give my opinion and say, like when we do like plant layouts, which is a big thing when we're laying out new factories, I'll go over and I'll give my opinion, and then I'll hear everyone else out. And unless I really feel very strongly on something, I'll usually go with their ideas, because, you know, that to me is not detrimental. We could always relay out the fact if it doesn't work. If you're constantly putting down other people's ideas and not listening, they'll stop submitting them.
You can't have your ego be bigger than someone else's.
Exactly.
You gotta listen to everyone in anything. Like, you don't know what, like, that person really thought. Like, it's not... You can't jump inside that person's body and think exactly what they're thinking, because in their head it might be like, oh, my God, this makes 100% sense. Like, this is the only way to do it. It's not like that in life.
Right.
It totally isn't. And another question I want to ask you is, you know, being... Like, every entrepreneur, like, dreams of what you do. You know, you made it. Like, you ran this company... But I don't want to ask about that. I want to ask about what was it like growing to become that big dream of an entrepreneur?
You know what? I guess because I was always, you know, too dumb to know better.
Yeah.
I never really had aspirations to be rich. I wanted to be successful. You know, I always knew the money would come later. And, you know, my wife and I, you know, when we started together and we started growing this business, it was more, you know, just trying to make it and be successful and build a legacy for our children and to not let our parents down. It was never about, oh, I want to make X amount of millions and put it in the bank. And you know, it just wasn't about that. And we really never lived very high. You know, it was more about family. You know, we always wanted to just be successful in family life more than financially. And then the financial came later.
And that's the thing that I feel like more people that need to realize, that it shouldn't be about the end goal. It should be about the journey. That it's great at the end of the day having a lot of money, but you know, the thing that you'll appreciate is when you didn't and you had to work your way up. You had to move your way through the mountains, figure out your way through the hills. And now look where you're at. I mean, it was all worth it.
It's the challenge. I mean, it's like a sporting event. Like, some of the best games that people play are the ones that they lost.
Yeah.
But they're the most memorable, you know, and the ones that they won. It might not be the championship game, but it could have been a game along the way. That's the way the business was. You know, some of the successes that we had, we really enjoyed, you know, creating new products, opening new warehouses, opening up new manufacturing facilities. That you know, that is some of the greatest accomplishments in business that we've ever had.
In the point where like you're going through now is like the growing phase, right? I mean, you're going from this one company. How were you able to manage to scale that? Was that you, or
It was me? No, it was me. It was you know, it's funny. I have a shark. It's a mold of a shark in my office. And then it says, you know, Alan the shark, if he stops swimming, he can't breathe. Because sharks always need to keep moving. That's me. I'm always looking to open up a new factory, open up a new warehouse, build a new relationship with vendors and customers, change product. It's just who I am. I don't sit still that way. And, you know, when we went to open up new factories, there was always a lot of naysayers. And, you know, we had 150,000 square feet. And then we were going to buy another building, which was 172,000 square feet about 9 years ago. And everyone said, you're nuts. Like, what are you going to do? I'm like, we're going to fill it. They're like, with what? I'm like, with business. And everyone told me, you're crazy. And the building was an old building. Took about a year and a half. We completely gutted it, made it state of the art, literally built this gorgeous factory. And within 3 years, we were sold out of capacity. So what do? We opened up another factory, found another factory, 104,000 square feet. Everyone said, you're nuts. This thing needs too much work.
Yeah.
And we sold out of capacity there. And, it's always, I enjoy the challenges.
And like I came up with the phrase "keep on keeping on" because, sometimes I relate to the bad times, but sometimes you gotta relate to the good times. Obviously, you're succeeding when you're selling out of capacity and everything. But the thing is, can you keep going and making it bigger and better when you're reaching the success? And that's where people were like, "Oh, I'm successful. All right, let me just stop. And this is all I need, right?"
So I'll tell you how. Remember I said there was 30 window companies in Philadelphia market, and they all went out. Most of them, I used to look and I would say, God, how are they half our size, but they have big shore houses, and they bought that Florida house, and they have a boat, and they live in that big mansion up in Bucks County, and it was because they all were leveraged. They owed the banks, and they would take these big mortgages, because when things are good in business, no one ever imagines things are going to go bad.
Yeah.
And when things are bad, people then can't imagine are going to be good again, so they bail and they shut down because they can't withstand it, like the bad times. We were always a debt-free company. We always bought the buildings personally. We always fixed them up and built the plants without any debt. We never wanted to owe the banks, because we knew in a downturn, you still have those bank notes you have to pay, and then the bank owns you. We were fortunate because we didn't spend on boats and planes and shore houses. We lived very modest. I mean, you're in my house now. I've been in this house for 30 years.
It's a great house, though.
Right. I mean, I bought this house when I was 22 years old.
Are you? Oh my! That's actually crazy.
Right. It was a builder went bankrupt. It was right after the Gulf War, and we finished it up ourselves. I used to come home from work at 6, 7 o'clock at night, stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, working, doing some carpentry, electrical, and I had friends that were in the trades.
Yeah.
So, that's what a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people just want instant gratification. They make $1,000, they spend $1,000. They go over to get a tax refund of $2,000. They go out and they buy the new PlayStation 5, and they go over and they buy the new iPhone, and there's not enough emphasis on saving and building. You have to have that nest egg, especially if you're going to start a business.
Especially because if things hit the fan.
Look at COVID.
Yeah.
How many businesses have failed now because of COVID? Because they didn't have enough reserve. You can't depend on the government to give you PPP money to keep you going. There's just not enough to go around. There's too many businesses where, we were too big to even qualify for the PPP money.
They couldn't touch you.
Yeah. But we were, again, even the people that bought us, they didn't need it.
And that's looking back on it. Now you're like looking at all those decisions like, man, I didn't need that boat. Like, I really didn't, because this is where, things hit the fan in 2020, and, being prepared for it is something that's looked over nowadays. Like, you don't really think about the world really ending, like, in the snap of your fingers. Like, you're saying Thanos.
This proved that it can happen.
And it can happen to anyone. That's
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's like, it's just crazy to think about that. Like, that's the world that we lived in. Now, like, the thing is about being in business. Something that I like to think about is just being very resilient when things like that happen. Like, how were you able to manage? You said you have a company with 900 people. You did have a company. Man, that sounds weird to say. Still,
I'm still running it, unfortunately. They keep pulling me in. Won't let me go.
They won't let you leave.
They don't want to let me go, and I'm a sucker and go, okay, I'll stay.
I mean, you have too much fun at that point.
It is.
Right?
I still love all the people that I work with. They're great people.
It's like, do you ever feel like that you wanna really leave?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm going to be 53 in March. I've been working full-time 35 years. I given my kids great opportunity. My wife and I have worked way too hard. We want to start enjoying ourselves a little more. I don't think I'll ever stop working, but I do want to take some more time. So we're going away for 5 weeks this winter.
Yeah, that's
We're going to
awesome.
go to Aruba for 5 weeks. That's going to be the longest trip of my life. We're going to, try it to see,
Yeah.
can I relax?
When the thing that, working from such a young age, and now you're finally getting to relax, rather, most of the time it's the other way around. You go to college, you have fun, and then you work, and then you relax 50 years later after that. And do you think that, that was kind of worth it at the end of the day?
Absolutely.
Working really hard now instead of, and going for it later.
It's two different philosophies. So my wife and I, we got married young, 24 and 22. We had our kids young, which is why my daughter's 26, my son's 24. And we really had a lot of fun in our 30s. So our 20s were lost because we were getting married. I was building the business. I was growing. But in our 30s, we were fortunate enough that we had our parents to help with our kids. And Fran and I were able to go to Vegas 4 or 5 times a year. We would jump out on a Thursday, come back Monday morning, right into work. And we were able to really enjoy ourselves then. And then 40s got crazy because that's when the business really started growing. It went from 25 million to, the 120 million. So, and then at 50s when we sold it.
Yeah.
So it was, I wouldn't change a thing because I love having my kids are more of my friends now.
And it's crazy and just in my mind because I think that most people realize that when they're 25 that maybe if I was working a little bit harder 2 years ago that I'd be able to do a little bit more now or do a little bit more. I'd be way farther ahead. And did you ever feel like you were falling behind because you were working so much, or did you feel like you kept going forward?
No. But think about it. I bought this house when I was 22, and I was working. It was, I had this asset now, and I was always, asset driven. I always wanted to, own stuff, own properties, own buildings, own equipment. And when my parents gave me half the company, that was my big asset, and. Another little analogy which is why I sold the company. The business was like when I went in a baby monster. And I used to love to feed it with a spoon. And then I went from a teaspoon to a tablespoon to one of those big soup spoons. And the monster kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this was one of my competitors that went out that told me this. And he went out and I said, "What happened?" He said, "Alan, it's like my baby monster got so big, I was shoveling food in its mouth as quick as I could. And then when I couldn't shovel any quicker, the monster ate me." So I always had that in the back of my mind. And we were getting to the point where I was feeling that our baby monster was getting so big that I was shoveling as fast as I could. And I kept telling myself, well, when is this monster going to get so big that I can't feed it quick enough, feed a business, obviously, and it could swallow me up? And that was one of the reasons why we sold.
And I was just going to get into that, just having all these assets and having all the, the luxury of owning your own company. What do you think the worst part about that was?
People's lives depending on you. When COVID hit, we had a furlough because the governor shut down the state.
Yeah.
We couldn't get an answer if we qualified as an exempt business, which we turned out it was, but it took 5 weeks to find out from the state if we qualified. So for 5 weeks, we had to furlough everyone. And, it's very hard when you know the people that you love are suffering. And, over the years, when you have people, when it was small and you knew somebody needed some clothing or food, you could just give them money. And, my father gave a woman a station wagon who had 2 kids. It was one of his cars. And we were able to do things like that. But then when you started having 100 employees, it was much harder because everyone has some type of burden. So, that gets tough, the personal relationships and, watching people suffer. People's, every day there's someone whose grandmother dies. Unfortunately, children pass. Kids get hit by cars. Their wife leaves them. It's always we've unfortunately had probably 15 suicides. From employees that worked for us that we were close with, and people either had mental health issues or addiction issues or, some other issues that we had to deal with. So that's some of the tough parts of the business where I wish you could help more, but you just can't.
In fact, when you're managing 900 people, it's hard to realize, you probably have, you're really talking to 10, 15 people every day, where rather than, 900.
Yeah.
You can't figure out what everyone else is going through.
Of the 900, I probably know 200 well. Longer term people that have spent, time with us. The other 700, I'd say 300 I know. Hey, Juan, how you doing? What's going on? How you been? That kind of stuff. And then, the other 400 are just, revolving door from the city. And, I'll walk through and introduce myself, but, they could be gone a week later, 2 weeks later. It's factory work.
Yeah, and the point that I like to make is that, you really never know what someone else is going through. Especially,
Right.
Being that big, you don't get to meet everyone. You can't help everyone that, even if you did, you can't help everyone that you want to meet. And I feel like that's what's really hard about, even for me, I want to help as many people as I can.
I'll tell you a story the other day. So we were at our Ben Salem facility on, Tuesday. And a guy comes in. He says, I'm here for a job interview. Who do I see? I happen to be up front. So I look and I said, let me call HR. It happened to be my son Austin, just by chance. So I go over and I look, and he has a suitcase that he's wheeling with him. So I noticed right away, if you're wheeling a suitcase in for a job interview, you're most likely homeless. So I go over, I call my son, I say, go find out a story. So sure enough, nice young guy. His name's Lloyd, I remember. And he came down from New York a few months ago for a job. He lost a job. He's been homeless, living on the street.
Yeah.
That is a little overwhelming to me sometimes. So initially I want to pull, a bunch of cash out of my pocket. I mean, James, go get yourself, somewhere to stay. Here goes a couple months rent. But I've been burnt so many times with that, because we find out that a lot of these guys are, Megan's Law child molesters. They're, heroin addicts, and they take the money and they're gone the next day, or, So we actually have a guy who works for us. He is our employee engagement manager. He is a social worker by trade, and his only job is to get in people's world. So we have people that will say, I'm suicidal. My baby mama just left me, and I'm, going to kill her. And he will get involved and get the right help. He'll get them in a friend's hospital sometimes. So he actually went over and he made some calls and got this guy a room that night, got him a SEPTA pass for a month. We fronted him $200, just enough to be able to get to work and try. And then we said, if he can make it a month, then we're going to help him out. So we've learned how to try to engage people like that to make a difference. But that's one person out of 900. We don't know. If I didn't see that suitcase, I would have no idea that this man struggles.
It's crazy to think about how many people there really are in the world. That's I always say I want to talk to everyone. I want to have every single person on this podcast because I feel like I can learn something from everyone. But it's just it can't happen like that. It's realistic.
Yeah.
I will not be able to do that. But just trying to take a sneak peek into everyone that you can, at least put yourself in their shoes for a change and really think about that really sucks. Especially because I'm obviously there's some bad people, but there's always the good people too. And anything that you do.
Unfortunately, we've gotten bit by so many bad ones that we've helped out, and we've found out horrible things, or they've done horrible things. So we're a little more cautious, and we try to get them some, public assistance first. Yeah. Through the system, and then if they're good people, we will then, rally and help them and get them back on the feet.
And that's something that, I hope warms your guys' hearts out there. But the thing is, you have the dream of having a big house and having nice cars and having your own company, but at the same time you're still wanting to give back.
Yeah.
Because you know what it's like. That's where I think that helps a lot of people out. These entrepreneurs want to give back, and these big businesses, these CEOs want to give back because they know what it's like to be at the very bottom. Like,
Yep.
obviously, these homeless people are at the very bottom. And even that you're just, like, the help always keeps going. Like, what did you think that, outside of, obviously, having all these assets, what do you think the best thing that you did with, like, your money would be? Besides, obviously, the company.
We, my wife and I, we have a charity that's kind of close to our heart. It's called Caring for Friends, caringforfriends.org. They feed 2,000 elderly people a day. They make pre-made meals. They're in Northeast Philly, and we donate a lot to them. They get food from food banks, and then they will cook the food there, but they'll also make 20-pound boxes of food. So they went from doing 30,000 pounds of food a month to 2 million pounds during COVID. And they're getting huge donations from Amazon and Giant and Acme, and they'll give food, like overflow food, to them, and then they package it and they deliver it through churches. They have a network of churches and synagogues and mosques. And it's amazing when you see all the religions work together. There's a gentleman named Abdullah that does all the cooking, but he cooks, the meals halal, kosher style meals, because, they are very similar, halal and kosher. And then they'll literally make 2,000 meals a day. But his deal is he'll do it for them as long as he could deliver through his mosques. So he goes and volunteers his time, brings people up, and they do it every day. So it's really amazing.
It's amazing to, like, think about how many people you can help, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, that's why I think that, like, charity organizations are great, because at the end of the day, the people that work for it aren't getting any money.
No.
Like, it's for everyone else but yourself. And that's what, like, that's when it's really worth it, and you see it happen. I'm sure that you've gotten to, have the insider look about, like, what actually goes on and everything, and it's, like, overwhelming to think about how many people that you can actually help through something
when
like that.
You think 2,000 people a day they're feeding, and that's only one organization.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really crazy. And then that's not including the ones that they're, giving boxes of food that are cooking for themselves. And they never know what they're getting. Like they say, Amazon will call and say, we have 4 tractor-trailer loads of food. They have to warehouse it. They have a 30,000 square foot warehouse racked floor to ceiling, and they bring it in, and they have refrigerators and freezers. And then they have to design a menu. What are we making today? What do we get? Yeah. We got, potatoes in. Okay, we'll make mashed potatoes. What else do we got? We got a chicken breast. Let's get some, grilled chicken breast. So then they have a big kitchen that they cook in.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear from. I hope the people out there understand that not only when you have a lot of money that you have a business responsibility, you have a responsibility to give back too, because that's when you really change the world, instead of, obviously having a big company is great. You make doors and windows, but when you can give back to so many other people, that's when, at the end of the day, it really
it's fulfilling. It definitely is fulfilling to be able to do that. Now, one thing I always thought, windows and doors, you think we make energy efficient products. We always look at it as, even though the windows are vinyl, they do last forever, which really is like maybe 40 years.
No, they last forever. They last
you know
forever.
what I'm saying? But the vinyl's all recycled.
Yeah.
So when you look at manufacturing windows, they're energy efficient windows. They could cut your energy bills 20, 30%. So they pay for themselves in a short period of time. When you look at the glass, we cut glass. The glass gets recycled. It all goes. It gets used in asphalt and roads. The vinyl gets recycled and goes in the seawall. They grind it up and they make seawall out of it. So, and aluminum gets 100% recycled back into fresh aluminum.
Just figure out, like, the little ways to, make it better. Make anything, like, that you do better. That's, I think, a big thing about business in general. It's like you're always trying to get, like, a little bit better. Like, what can I do? What can I do to give back now, and make that better too, rather than just that. But there
always has to be a profit margin.
Yeah.
There always has to be some financial incentive to, to do something. It's very hard in big corporations if you can't. When we recycle, yes, it's because we don't want to pay trash hauling. But it also, we're not necessarily doing it for the, ecology of the world. That is a benefit, but you try to do both. You try to find ways that will help the bottom line, or at least be neutral to the bottom line, and also help the world.
I mean, that's what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And another question I have for you is, if, I ask this to everyone, classic turn back the clock question. If you could do anything different, would you?
Honestly, I don't look backward.
Love it.
I'm a look forward guy. I always say that if I die today, I die without regrets. Every decision I made it with full knowledge. Every mistake, I knew what I was getting myself into. Every success, I wear proudly because I knew what I was doing. So, I don't think you can look back and, say, ooh, I could have, should have, would have, because again, there's a million other outcomes that could have been worse than one where you're at now.
I mean, that's like a lot of people that I've asked that question to. They all have the same answer, and that's the answer that it should be. You shouldn't have to look back on anything and realize that, like, man, I live life with regret, because it's just not the way that you want to live. You want to, when you're here, I mean, might as well just try and make it dent as you can. Like, life
is like the I don't know if you remember the Butterfly Effect, the old movie. Every little thing you do, it's a ripple effect. Like if you go back and say, 10 years ago, if I wouldn't have done this one thing, things would have been fine. No, but it would have changed a million other outcomes. Every little thing you do. So, you can't look back and say, this one decision made me or broke me.
I love that, because you can't think about how one decision, because it's just, at the end of the day, it's so minuscule that it shouldn't matter. And, the next thing that I want to ask you is, I ask to everyone, if there is one piece of life advice and one piece of wisdom that you want to pass along, what would that be?
Just, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride. It's, life doesn't come with a manual. You have to enjoy it, cherish, your loved ones. Just don't beat yourself up for mistakes. Just change them. Change them. You're going to make them. Just change them. Keep moving forward. Don't look back.
I mean, you can't look back. Look back. You'll never accomplish anything if you keep looking back.
Yeah.
That's when you get in the accident. You gotta just keep moving forward, guys. Keep on keeping on. I know I say it a lot, and I know I say I plug it for my merch, but I truly believe if you keep going, that you can accomplish anything that you want to accomplish. All right, Alan. So we're almost at the end of the show, and last thing I do before we have our little closing segment is I like to ask everyone that comes on the show to bring in a quote that they kind of hold close to their heart. They kind of look back on and mean something to them. So Alan, what would that quote be for you?
I said it earlier: steel sharpens steel.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with the best people. Surround yourself with people that are going to help you obtain your goals. Don't have turkeys around you. They're going to keep you down.
I love it, man. So, guys, I'd like to thank you for tuning in today. Alan, thank you for coming on the show, obviously.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for distributing some of the wisdom. Is there anything that you want to plug before we turn off the mics?
No, that's it, man. I'm retired. I got nothing to plug.
What was the organization?
No, it was Northeast Building Products Corporation is the business that I sold.
Yeah.
They're great people, great windows, and Caring for Friends. That is a great organization if you ever want to donate any time. They get food. They need people to help distribute it and, feed, elderly and people that can't take care of themselves.
I love it, man. So, guys, again, thank you for tuning in. That's a wrap for episode 4 of season 2. If you guys haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to my podcast. Hit that follow button. If you're listening to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. If you're on YouTube right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you guys get notified whenever a new podcast comes out. I have merch, everyone. I do have merch. It's on theronanbellshow.com. Keep on keeping on. I got beanies in right now. I got hoodies. They're really nice. All the money that I get from that goes straight back into the podcast. I don't take anything. So, guys, it actually helps the quality of the podcast get better. I don't make any money off of it. And, guys, that's pretty much it for today. Thank you for tuning in. As always, y'all, just keep on keeping on. Keeping on. Keeping on. Keeping on. Keeping on.